So let's take this up with our panel this week. Joining me now is the Hill opinion contributor and EFB advocacy partner, Jim Feehery, and Fox News contributor, Wall Street Journal columnist, and my colleague on the Journal editorial page, Kim Strassel. We'll talk about the curious state of US energy policy later, but let's start with the calls for the US to do more for Ukraine. And Kim, if I can start with you, we had this episode this week where Poland offered to send planes to a NATO base in Germany, which would then be flown into Ukraine to help. The Biden administration turned it down, saying that this would represent a dangerous escalation of the conflict. It does seem, Kim, doesn't it, that we're allowing Vladimir Putin to escalate on his terms.
Yeah, this is a fiasco at so many levels, Jerry, starting with the fact that the administration was all over the place. At first, you had the Secretary of State, Blinken, suggest that Poland had a green light to go ahead with this, and then only to reverse themselves. And then now the administration has come up with all kinds of shifting rationale for why this won't work. One of them is the deterrence argument, or the argument that we would escalate if this was the case. But as a number of senators pointed out this week during a hearing, at the same time, the administration is suggesting that the other things we are sending to Ukraine are even more deadly, like our anti-tank missiles and anti-aircraft defenses. So there's an illogical aspect to this, which is they're saying that we're currently sending even more lethal aid to Ukraine, but that sending airplanes, which are less lethal, would be an escalation. They haven't been able to explain that inconsistency.
Jim Feehery, we do seem to be leading from behind here. Once again, that's a familiar position. I remember President Obama did that a few years ago when he was president too. The administration is lagging behind Congress. It finally this week agreed to an oil embargo under pressure from Congress. It's doing much less than the European nations are doing in terms of some of the sanctions, especially sanctioning some of the individuals. And as Kim's just said, we've got ourselves into this position this week where we're actually restraining our allies from doing what would be quite a sensible and indeed very helpful thing to do to help the Ukrainians. What's going on, do you think? What is the administration afraid of?
I think they're incompetent, Jerry. You stole my line. I was going to say they're not leading from behind; they're leading from way behind. I was in Europe last week, and you could admire what the EU and NATO has tried to do, but the president and his team are incompetent. I mean, Bob Gates once said that whatever decision he's been wrong on every major decision in his whole life, Joe Biden, and this is continuing. It's actually very disturbing. I think that the Congress wants the administration to be much more aggressive. I think the American people want the Congress to be want Joe Biden to be much more aggressive. And Vladimir Putin is not someone to be that scared of. Russia is a paper tiger. If we had stood up stronger before this whole thing started, there wouldn't be a debacle in Ukraine. And I think that it's the weakness of this administration, the weakness of this president, that is really kind of making this crisis go on. And I fear for the people of Ukraine, but I also fear for the people of Europe. And I'm not the only one. The Europeans are worried about this as well, which is, one of the salutary impacts of this is at least the Europeans are stepping up and saying, we got to start contributing more to our own defense. And that's what Donald Trump said for years. And now they're finally getting the message. They've got to start doing this.
And Kim, just very briefly, if you would, there are conservatives who say, look, this isn't our fight. What are we doing? We shouldn't be involved in this. This is a dispute between Ukraine and Russia. It's thousands of miles away. And there is a real risk of escalation. We get involved. We get, direct U.S. military action would bring us into a war with Russia. Why should we be doing it? How do you respond to that?
Well, Ukraine is Europe. Ukraine is a sovereign nation, and Ukraine is our ally. And if we're going to have the attitude that we do not do anything when autocrats roll in to free nations, then we are setting up the rest of Western Europe, and we're setting up the situation for a true World War III. This was a sort of appeasement mentality or close your eyes mentality that helped get us into World War II and other previous conflicts. You have to be aggressive against the world's tyrants.